Welcome back to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Iran and the Middle East in the past 24 hours. Iran's chief negotiator is building an economic answer to Washington before the next sanctions package is even published. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Qalibaf told Iranian and Iraqi business leaders in Baghdad that the two countries should deepen trade and use their national currencies more often. He tied economic development directly to national security and framed the coming pressure as economic and psychological warfare. His role matters. Qalibaf is not simply delivering a parliamentary speech. He is identified as Tehran's lead negotiator with the U.S., while promoting a practical route around dollar pressure. That places Iraq at the center of the next enforcement contest. Iraqi banks, border commerce, energy payments, and access to U.S. dollars make Baghdad both a potential relief channel for Iran and a vulnerable target for Washington. The U.S. has announced maximal intent, but it has not published the full operating manual. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent promised the toughest sanctions in history and urged China and American partners to cooperate. President Donald Trump threatened consequences for any bank, business, airport, government entity, or country that gives Iran a lifeline. Iranian leaders warned of a devastating response to new U.S. threats but disclosed no operational change. Those words already change behavior. Banks, insurers, shippers, and refiners do not wait for the final rule if they believe a transaction could become toxic next week. They reduce exposure first and ask questions later. The executable architecture still matters. Designations, legal authorities, deadlines, waivers, and enforcement guidance will determine whether the campaign becomes a coherent global regime or a sweeping threat with uneven compliance. Iranian oil offers to China are already falling as the blockade bites. Traders report fewer cargoes for September and October, shrinking floating storage and prices moving from discounts toward premiums. Independent Chinese refiners are looking at Brazilian and Iraqi alternatives. Estimated Chinese imports of Iranian crude have dropped far below their 2025 peak. Every number in that trade is imperfect because ships disappear from normal tracking, cargoes are relabeled, and intermediaries hide ownership. The direction is still significant. Fewer tankers are clearing Iranian ports and the Strait of Hormuz. If the U.S. adds aggressive secondary sanctions against buyers and shippers, the pressure could deepen quickly. It could also widen the confrontation with Beijing. Tehran is answering with a sovereignty argument and a household resilience test. Officials say economic coercion will fail and claim that regional trade, domestic production, and non-dollar settlement can absorb the hit. Families face the practical version through higher prices, shortages, and unstable work. An economic strategy can look durable in a speech and brittle in a grocery basket. That is why Qalibaf's Iraq proposal is worth watching in detail. Do Iraqi banks process more national currency trade? Does Washington tighten their access to dollars? Does Baghdad choose compliance to protect its own financial system? The answers will show whether Tehran has found an operating channel or simply announced one. The U.S. is also squeezing Iran's regional cash network. Fresh sanctions target 10 people accused of moving money for Hezbollah through commercial flights, exchange houses, front companies, and routes linking Iran, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and Lebanon. The named actors face frozen U.S.-linked assets and transaction bans. Turkey's role adds a strategic twist. Ankara can help close a financial corridor while simultaneously clashing with Israel over Syria. That makes cooperation selective rather than automatic. The sanctions will matter if partner governments close exchange houses, restrict couriers, and protect correspondent banking. Hezbollah and its backers will try to replace people and routes faster than enforcement can map them. The Strait of Hormuz remains the central bargaining instrument. Daily shipping did not show another dramatic collapse, but traffic is still constrained and tracking is incomplete. Qalibaf has linked reopening to sanctions relief, released Iranian assets, an end to the U.S. blockade, and military restraint. Washington says the earlier arrangement failed and is moving toward more pressure. A damaged level of traffic can become the new normal without becoming safe. Refiners still face uncertain deliveries. Insurers still price war risk. Escorts still consume military resources. The most useful indicators are delivered cargoes, refinery runs, premiums, and the number of ships willing to operate openly. Across the region, money and military power keep arriving before political sequence. In Syria, an Israeli strike on Abu al-Duhur exposed a dispute with Turkey over whether Ankara is training the new Syrian Air Force or establishing a lasting position. Israel wants to preserve freedom of action. Turkey wants influence over the new Syrian security order. Damascus says it is rebuilding its own capacity. In Gaza, the U.S. has committed roughly $206 million to an international stabilization force. Funding can buy vehicles, training, and deployment capacity. It cannot decide whether Hamas disarms first, Israel withdraws first, or an outside force arrives before either side accepts its mandate. Lebanon has the same sequencing problem. Aid is rising, but Israel ties withdrawal to Hezbollah's disarmament, while Lebanese authorities insist on sovereignty. Iranian official media presents these fronts as one campaign against regional independence. Economic pressure becomes another battlefield. Hormuz becomes proof that Iran still controls strategic leverage. Hezbollah sanctions and Israeli operations become parts of the same American-backed architecture. Beside that coverage, sport, religious travel, culture, local industry, and ordinary family life create a picture of a society continuing under pressure. Watch the next U.S. sanctions release for named targets and actual authorities. Focus on Chinese refiners, Iraqi banks, Turkish exchange houses, and shipping intermediaries. Then watch household prices and wage payments inside Iran, because that is where resilience claims meet reality. In Hormuz, compare ship counts with delivered oil. Across Syria, Gaza, and Lebanon, ignore another round of grand promises unless it comes with a written mandate and an agreed order of operations. The strategic picture is tightening. Economic coercion is becoming more operational, Iran is building regional workarounds, and the wider Middle East still lacks the sequencing needed to convert pressure into settlement. That combination can produce leverage. It can also produce a longer and more expensive stalemate. Thanks for listening. The headlines will keep coming, so we'll keep sorting signal from noise. Find the daily written brief at restrictedhandling.substack.com, and we'll be back with more tomorrow.